All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is the NBA pre-lock show where we are here to answer your questions, go game by game, and kind of show you what we're doing. I did that in the reverse order. We'll kind of show you what we're doing, and then we'll answer your questions towards the end, or if they happen to be relevant while we're talking about that game, we'll definitely touch on those too. But we have a lot of games on this slate. I can't waste too much time with the fluff, but it was a good NFL slate yesterday. I know NBA had some shenanigans in it, but let's keep the good vibes going. We're not going to talk about that. We have to stay focused today. Good to see everyone in the chat. Appreciate y'all. Let's make it happen. First things first, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers going up against the Raptors. Nice 232.5 spread or total. Nice 1 point spread. Close spread, which is something that we like to see. There's injury news throughout this entire slate, so buckle up. We're going to have a lot to talk about for the Cavs tonight. Jared Allen is out. That's big. Darius Garland is out. Also big. DeAndre Hunter is out. Big pieces of news. Dean Wade is questionable, which also matters because he plays a decent amount of minutes. And then Sam Merrill, Max Strus, Craig Porter, those guys have been out for a while. So a lot of options and value coming from this Cavs team. Brandon, you're sharing your screen today. What was your game plan here?
Yeah, I love this team quite a bit, as does the field, of course. So Jalen Tyson and Naquan Tomlin are, of course, the chalk value on the slate. They're missing a bunch of guys, and all of these guys can be scary value. I'm just going to eat the chalk there. They just make lines work well, helps you get to some of the studs we have on this slate, and the opportunity should be there for them. I'll love them even more if Wade is rolled out. So definitely crossing my fingers there. That'll make me feel a bit more comfortable. I love the matchup too. So just going to eat that chalk on them. Love Mobley as well. We know what kind of upside he has. He was popping for me naturally. Yeah, 25%. So that's kind of where I want him to be. And I will put him in just to make sure he doesn't go below that. Lonzo, I think, is viable too with no Garland and Craig Porter Jr. Always concerned with him staying around 25 minutes. But again, love the matchup, so wouldn't be surprised if he smashed tonight. Didn't do anything there, but I was getting around 15%, which he dropped to 10. So I'm okay with that. Don't love him enough to force more. Mitchell, he's had a lot of smash games so far. Another, along with Mobley, up there with one of the highest upsides on the slate. So put a 20% min there. Proctor, I mention him all the time. I feel like, well, he has a little ownership more than normal in the past, but Tyrese Proctor, somebody always mentioned. Love him tonight. Min price. Again, no Craig Porter, no Garland. I wish Ball was out too, but even with Ball playing, Proctor should see solid minutes tonight. So definitely want some exposure there. Put a 20% min there. I just wanted to be slightly over the field. And then if Dean plays, if he showed up a little bit, I guess I'd be okay at this price, but his usage is so low and definitely one of the more volatile guys. So definitely no strong feelings there, but I wouldn't talk anybody out of playing him. So, yeah overall, I love this team.
Yeah, you can almost always tell someone's usage rate by looking at their points per minute rating. And you look at Dean Wade, it's the lowest here. So, yeah, not a great spot. But he is so cheap that if he plays, he is DFS viable. Pretty much all of these Cavs are viable because of all the guys they have out. The DS is on a lot of these guys. You're going to see them showing up in your lineups. Guys like Tyson and Tomlin show up a good amount naturally. Mobley in some of my earlier runs wasn't showing up, so I had to put a 25% min on him, but now he's showing up in 41% of my lineups. So I don't necessarily love him that much, but I'm not going to tinker it and make him show up less. And then Donovan Mitchell, I have a 20% min on just to make sure he shows up because he wasn't showing up for me earlier. So that one felt necessary for me on this slate. And I have a 23% min on Lonzo Ball in my 150 max lineups, just because he's someone I want to make sure I don't forget about. In my 20 max lines, he's a bit less of a necessity for me. I'm not always going to run 20 lines and run 150 lineups, but I did make that decision and call today. We'll see how it goes. It feels like a lot right now. And then Proctor, I wanted some exposure to. I have a 15% min on him. I couldn't go as strongly as you, man, and go balls to the wall with the full 20, but I do like the spot like I do for most of the Cavs. Next up, the other side of this game, we have the Raptors. Another spot that's not injury free. I've been asking for it for a while. I wanted a little bit more clarity on this team, and, we've gotten it. RJ Barrett is out. So that's like a bit of a boost to Jamal Sheed. And obviously all the other starters see a usage boost here too. When it comes to specifics, the guy who sees the highest increase in usage is Scotty Barnes with like a 7% increase. And then Brandon Ingram up a 3% increase. But we know a lot of these guys are going to benefit here. What did you do, Brandon?
Yeah, I targeted a few guys here, so I just put a 10% min on Barnes. He has the highest upside on the team, so I just want to make sure I have some exposure there, especially with no Barrett. I thought about quickly, if I was doing 150, I'm just doing 20 max tonight. I probably would force some of him in, but probably not going to get to any in my 20 max. But not against him, I just don't feel strong enough to force him in. Podol, I do like quite a bit. I still love his price tag, 5,600. Should play a ton tonight. Cleveland's front court is a bit weaker. Mobley is a great defender, but no Allen should help him, and I think he can smash tonight. So put a 15% min there. Thought about Ingram, just not. He doesn't show enough ceiling for me to force him in at 7,700. Again, if I was playing 150, I might have thrown a 10% min on him, but at my 20 max, I'm just kind of being a bit more picky than I normally am. And then Jamal Shed, he's been in great form. Last two games, he's scored close to 30 fantasy points, and at 3,600, if he does that again, he can be very sneaky. So put a 10% min there. And then I thought about Jacoby Walter, but again, I'm being a bit more picky because he hasn't been as good as Shed, but he's been scoring a little more than 20 points last couple of games as well, and plays a lot of minutes. So he would be somebody I would probably throw like a 5% min in on my if I were playing 150. That's it for me. I think you're muted. Yeah, not sure if it's me, but I think you might be muted.
Oh, yep, it's me.
Yeah, there you go.
I have a 20% min on Scotty Barnes for both my 150 max and 20 max. He's someone I'm just looking to prioritize on this slate with RJ Barrett being ruled out. Outside of that, I don't have a min on anyone for my 20 max, just because, like you said, just got to be a little bit more picky. But Jakob Podol and Sheed are both showing up in 15% of my lineups, quickly showing up in 5% for my 20 max. For my 150, I have a lot more lineups to work with, so I can put a few more mins. I saw that 20 min on Barnes, 10 on Ingram, just because he does see the second highest increase in usage. Matchup's not my favorite, but that's never really mattered for Ingram, so we'll see what happens there. 10% min on Quickly and Podol, not my favorite spots for them, but just given the situation, I want some exposure, but I won't be over the field. And then Sheed, I have a 10% min on just to make sure he doesn't fall with some of the other value we've gotten. All right. Next up, we have the Pistons going up against the Pacers. Pretty widespread here at 9.5 points, but we've seen that with most of the games for the Pacers. So that's not a huge surprise. Let's see. For Detroit, there's not really a lot of injury news here. Just a nice matchup against the Pacers. What are you doing here, Brandon?
First off, I'm not a Pistons fan by any means, but I feel like I should give them a shout out for how well they're playing. They're 14-2 right now, which if you told me that at the beginning of the season, I would think you're crazy. Not that they're a bad team. They had a solid year last year too, but man, they're looking pretty damn good so far. And I think their win streak is up to 12 now. So, yeah, this team is looking strong for sure. But there's only two guys I wanted to target here. We love attacking the Pacers when they play. They usually play at a faster pace and high-scoring games when they can keep it competitive. So hopefully they can do that tonight. But I wanted the two guys with the highest upside on the team, and that's Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham. I just threw a 10% min on both of them and kind of moved on. Couldn't get to anybody else.
Yeah, see, 2011 M. The DS has been on fire the last few days. It's been a good run. Hopefully can keep it going. For those of you who are curious and you want access to the Domination Station, link is in the description. Use promo code BDUB, BDUBB for a 10% discount there. To have access to the Discord, to have access to the Domination Station, join us. Let's make it happen. But for those of you who are here, I am with you, Brandon. The Pistons have been so freaking good this year, and I feel like they're still not getting the respect they deserve, which is wild because they've been so good. I have an 8% min on Cade. Just want to be close to field weight in my 150. I have a 15% min on Duren. Just trying to make sure I'm over the field on both of those guys because I like the spot for them. In my 20 max, I have a 15% min on Duren. Just making sure he shows up in more lines, but no min on. Actually, I am still going to put a min on Cade just because he's probably my second favorite pay-up option next to Jokic. And now that we have the value, I do like having him in the mix. So I will put that min on both of them still. All right. Next up, we have the Indiana Pacers. For Indiana, they've been a little bit better since Mathurin joined. Nesmith, Toppin, Furphy, Jones, Jackson, all those guys are still out, but no new injury news here. What's your game plan with these guys?
Yeah, I only targeted a couple guys here. Mathurin, of course, since coming back from his injury, especially last game where he played close to 40, he's just in great form. He has 50-point upside, so I think there's still some meat on the bone at 6,700. So didn't have to do anything there. He's showing up currently at 30%. If he falls, I would definitely throw a min on him. And then Andrew Nembhard, I still like him quite a bit. Last slate, he went under kind of like he is this slate and put up a 50 burger. So I do worry a little more about his usage with Mathurin back in the mix and, of course, Siakam in play as well. But 6,500 is still a great price for his potential ceiling. So threw a 10% min on him just as a leverage play. And then didn't get to anyone else here. I'll mention Siakam just because, again, he's the guy when Halliburton isn't here. A lot of usage. Do like that he's below 9K, but again, I'm just kind of being picky tonight, so didn't get to him.
Yeah, it's weird. We saw a 50-pointer come out from Nembhard last time out, which is the most he scored even when Mathurin was out, which just goes to show that both Mathurin and Nembhard are the two guys for this team right now when it comes to ceiling, if you're not counting Siakam. And Siakam right now, his price tag is just not on my radar much at all. So I'm really just looking at Mathurin and Nembhard. Mathurin is showing up for me in my 150 naturally, around 30%, like you said. But in my 20 max run, he's showing up right at 15%, which is around field weight exposure. That's the situation for me that I'm keeping a close eye out for. If he goes below 15, I will put him in. But so far, he's not. And I have a 5% min on Nembhard in my 150 max. I'm not going to put a min on him in my 20 max, even though I do think he's a solid play. I just don't like picking on the Pistons. It's just not something I make a habit out of doing too often, even though they do have a nice total at 236. But
yeah, that was kind of another reason why I did it too.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have the Knicks going up against the Nets. For the Knicks tonight, we have Mitchell Robinson out and Landry Shamet out. Both of those injuries do move the needle a good bit. Towns is a much better play with Robinson out. It makes Hart slightly more viable. Clarkson with Shamet out is a much better play, especially on FanDuel. Also, another boost to guys like Hart and some of the other role players for the Knicks tonight. Who is standing out for you?
Yeah, it's pretty much just the two main guys here, Cat and Brunson. They both have great upside. The spread, of course, is worrisome, but both of these guys are good enough to where they could be the reason why there is a blowout if it does. So with some of the value we have, just want to get them in the mix. I consider Josh Hart. If I was playing 150, I might have thrown a 5% min on him, but at 6,900, I just didn't take that shot.
I understand that. Not my favorite team to always take shots on, but I do like it when I can convince myself there's a reason for it. And with Mitchell Robinson out, I feel like that's a big enough boost to these guys for me to force some exposure. For Cat in both 20 max and 150, I have a 20% min on him. He's just always a priority for me when I think he's going to play the 5 a little bit more. And I like Josh Hart, another guy. If you give me a reason to play him, I will take that shot. In 20 max, I have a 10% min. In 150, I have a 15% min. Usually I would do it in reverse. Go a little bit heavier in 20 max, but Josh Hart terrifies me, and I just don't want to ruin more lineups in my 20 max this time around. No worries, Buckeyes. And Kevin, Wagwan, good to see you, man. All right, so that's going to be it for me with the Knicks. In my 150 max, I put a 5% min on Brunson just to have some exposure, but not my favorite spot for him. But like you said, he's always dangerous to go off. For the Nets tonight, Brooklyn, pretty healthy outside of the guys who have been out for a while. MPJ, he's been going off here recently, but looks like you don't like any of them. Is that the game plan here?
Yeah, again, 20 max. I was very picky, especially with this team. MPJ, if I was playing 150, I would at least have a 10% min on him. He's been the guy pretty much all season for this team. He's been getting anywhere between 40 to 50 fantasy points. So don't like this matchup for him, but I could definitely see a world where he does decent tonight. Demon is another one that I probably would force in. I'm still thinking about it. But again, for 20 max, just how volatile he is, I didn't feel the need to force him in, especially with some of the other value we have at guard, but definitely don't hate it if you're doing 150. Claxton is someone I always think about too, but again, don't really like the matchup, and I wish he was a bit cheaper, and I just like other centers a bit more, especially in that last game with the Pelicans when we talk about Queen. So I didn't feel the need to force him in. And Clowney is another one if you want to take a shot, somebody who can be sneaky. He's shown upside a few times this year. 4,900 isn't too bad. But yeah, I don't feel strong enough to force him in either. So yeah, I'm just kind of bypassing this team, and I don't think I'm naturally getting any. So
yeah, it's so weird. Like on a smaller slate, we could find some reasons, but on this slate, harder to. Jules, appreciate you, man. Slap the like button if you haven't already. I know you haven't, so please do. Next up, for me with the Nets, I'm with you. 20 max, I'm not touching any of these guys. But 150, I have a 15% min on Michael Porter Jr., going to be slightly over the field there, and a 10% min on Eager the Demon. So we will see what happens. It's just not a sexy enough spot for me to force exposure to it in my 20 max lineups, but they should be low owned enough and have enough upside at their price range for them to be viable for me. It looks like we did get the news that Dean Wade is out. Have you seen that yet, Brandon?
Yes, I was just about to say it. Thank God.
Beautiful. That makes
definitely feel better about the Tomlin and Tyson chalk for sure.
Not gonna lie, I was a little worried about it, but now I feel better because Dean Wade just takes up space.
Yeah,
and that's what we need for some of these guys to feel better about it. So good. All right. Next up, we have the Mavericks going up against the Heat, a spot that I will probably always like for the rest of the season. For the Mavs tonight, Anthony Davis is doubtful. Brandon Williams is questionable, which matters a lot. Derek Lively is out. Brandon, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I wish I liked this team overall more than what I actually do, but I wanted some. So I put a 10% min on Gafford. I like his price, 5,500. I love the matchup. We talk about targeting Miami all the time. Gafford is a bit scary to play because he is known to have foul trouble or getting hurt in the middle of the game. So his availability on the court is a bit scary, but when he does play a full game, he has shown nice upside and is a great points per minute guy. So I am taking a shot there. I did consider PJ Washington. If I was doing my 150, I would throw a 10% min on him. He's just another volatile guy, and I don't feel as confident with him still slightly over 7K. So um, he's in consideration, I guess. And then Brandon Williams, I think he was present at shoot around, so it's looking like he will play. And then just at pricing, I've liked targeting Williams, but I think we have some stronger guard play elsewhere, so didn't take a shot there. And then D'Lo was really only in consideration for me if Williams misses. So yeah, it's looking like it's just Gafford for me. I know who you're taking a shot on that I didn't mention, so I'll let you go ahead and talk about him.
Man, I wanted Brandon Williams to be out so bad.
I
If
did too.
Brandon Williams was out, this would be my Cooper flag stand all day, every day. But unfortunately, like you said, he's at shoot around. So it makes the spot a lot less interesting. In my 20 max line, I might follow you and just do a 10% min on Daniel Gafford. That makes sense. Let me see if he's showing up in any of these lines. He's not. Oh, he's showing up in one. There's some other bigs I like that I'm going to be over the field on. So, again, like in 20 max, you just got to be careful there. And so, if some of my other leverage plays are coming up, I just can't do it. But in my 150 max, I can have a lot more fun. So, I have a 5% min on Cooper Flag. Leverage play there. I just like the matchup and the pace. The price tag is extremely appropriate. He'll probably disappoint me here, but I'll pretty much almost always take a shot on that type of play in 150. I have a 5% min on PJ Washington. So I do think our ownership's a little off. I think this will be closer to me being around field weight. Brandon Williams didn't make the cut for me. I think he's priced appropriately. Wouldn't shock me if it's a strong game, but just couldn't do it. And then Daniel Gafford, I have a 10% min on. Russell, I think you're right. I'll keep a 6% min on him. Kind of hoping Brandon Williams doesn't see as much run today with him being questionable, but it's a bit more of a narrative thing. All right. Other side of this game is tough, mostly because Tyler Hero has returned. And with Hero back, it makes things a little gross, but we got some news to balance things out a little bit. Andrew Wiggins is out. Norman Powell is out. Guys who have been playing a shit ton of minutes for them. And Nikola Jovic has been out. Brandon, I'm sure you're getting a lot of these guys, right?
Yeah. I'll start with Bam. This is the first time we are seeing him under 8K, so definitely playing him. I say it all the time, and it has helped me more times than not, but love targeting bigs against Dallas, especially with all the guys that they're still missing. So 20% min there just to be slightly over the field. Davion Mitchell, 15% min. I love his price tag. He has 40-point upside. He's gotten there many times this season. Great matchup. So want some exposure there. Khalil Ware, I don't like him usually as much when Bam is in, but definitely with some of these other guys missing, Wiggins and Powell, there's more minutes for him to soak up in usage. So I definitely want some exposure there. So put a 10% min. And then Larson is another, I think, great viable value play. He's been very solid, been kind of hovering around 30 fantasy points per game. So I think he can be sneaky at this ownership, especially with the field focusing on the Cavaliers chalk. So want to make sure I have exposure there. And then that is pretty much it for me. Oh, I guess I'll mention Hawkes too. I think he's viable too. He's kind of cooled down from the beginning of the season. So at 7K, I just decided not to take a shot there. But again, if I was doing 150, then I'll probably get some exposure there.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of this. I might feel a little bit more strongly in some areas. Bam, I have a 20% min on in my 150. Where I have a 15% min on in my 150. Davion Mitchell's going to be a leverage play for me tonight at 5,100. I just really like this spot and matchup for him. So I'm making him a priority. I have a 20% min there. And then if our ownership is right, then Larson is also going to be a leverage play. I have a 20% min there at 4,800 with all the guys they have out. The wings are the ones who benefit here. Hawkes, at 7K, I just think he's priced appropriately. He does have a little bit of upside here, but just not my favorite spot. So couldn't make him a priority. And then for 20 max, I have a 20% min on Bam, 10% min on all up at the 15 for Davion. And then Larson, I also have a 10% min on. So pretty good team to target here. Just, a little bit more limited with that 20 max lineups. All right, next up, we have the Nuggets going up against Memphis. We all know how bad Memphis is. And then you see Jokic at 13,500 for salary. And you're like, hey, how are we going to afford it? And thankfully, we found a way. Aaron Gordon is out, which does open things up a little bit for this team. Curious, Brandon, who do you like here?
So I'll start with Peyton Watson. Not my favorite guy to target, but it just makes sense with Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown out. Last 5 games, he's been seeing exactly 34 minutes. And it's kind of hovering around 30 fantasy points. Of course, we want to see a bit more, but a few games ago, he did show he had some upside and put up 55 fantasy points. So don't think he'll do that again tonight, but I'm at least hoping for close to 40, especially in this matchup against a struggling Grizzlies team. So have a 15% min there. Jamal Murray, I was bouncing back and forth, but just with all the value and the matchup, I wish he was a bit cheaper, but I'm still going to take a shot because he has 50 plus point upside. So threw a 10% min there. And then Jokic is just Jokic. That price is insane, but we know what he can do. I think he has to put up like 80 fantasy points to pay this price off, which he has done multiple times already this season. So just makes sense for me to target him in this matchup, especially with some of the value we have. So 15% min there for me. Yeah. And that is pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have a 15% min on Jokic for both lineups. I have a 15% min on Murray for 150, 10% min for 20, and then I have a 10% min on Watson in my 150, but I didn't put a min on him in my 20 max. Honestly, I don't love Watson, and so I'm just... With my 20 maxes, I kind of just ride my gut a bit more. So if I don't like someone, I'm not going to force exposure to it. But he is still showing up in one lineup, so we'll see how that goes. And then for my 150, I have a 6% min on Cameron Johnson, going to be double the field there. He's getting better. He's playing more minutes, a little bit of a slow start, but he'll get back into form. And with Aaron Gordon now, I do expect him to take on a bit more of the role. And hopefully his usage rate will increase because that's still been absolute shit.
Vooch and Herter are out.
Boom. There you go. That's the news we wanted.
Jalen Smith.
Even more value for the slate. Not that we needed it, but we have it. All right, yeah, agreed. Ware should ball out. DJ, Bam's looking good too. We like the Heat tonight. Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. Still the last piece of news we need. Jaren Jackson Jr. is questionable. We've seen what happens at this point when he's not playing. Huge boost to everyone else. But with Jackson in, everyone's priced appropriately. So no one's standing out here. It looks like you're looking at things the same way. Is that right? Or
Yeah, I can't target this team, especially in a 20 max. If Jaren was out, I would have consider it. We've been targeting Vince Williams and Aldama. They
Edie.
both have been, and Edie. All three of them have been very solid lately, but don't really love this spot. JJJ's back in the mix, so yeah, I just kind of skip past this team.
Yeah, just have to move on. We'll see what happens. For Portland, going up against the Bucks. Decent total, nice spread. This is always the kind of game I like to get exposure to. For the Portland side of this game, they have Shaedon Sharpe out, which is a boost to guys like Avdia and Klingon. Drew Holiday is out, which means Grant will continue to start like he has been. It looks like you like some of these guys. Who are you looking at?
First, I'll start with Caleb Love. He is looking like a chalk piece again tonight. I did cap him at 30. I think we have better value than him, especially at 4,500. One guy we just mentioned who's only $600 more is Davion Mitchell. I'd much rather play him and pay that difference. I will say if he starts, then I will feel a little more comfortable in him, but I mean, we just saw last game, he was chalk and came off the bench and just did absolutely nothing. So not saying that'll happen again tonight. And it is a good matchup. So I just don't want him showing up a crazy amount at this price. If he was still in the 3K range, then I would consider it. But yeah, I'm just taking a stand there. Avdia is viable. I didn't force any mins on him. He was showing up 15%, so slightly under the field, but he's kind of been more inconsistent lately. So at 9,300, he's just at that price tag where I don't feel confident enough to go to force more of him in. And then I did put a 10% min on Klingon. I might bump that down to 5. I just like the his price in the matchup. He has 40 to 50 point upside. So I wanted some shots there and didn't really get anywhere else.
Yeah, no, I am looking at things pretty similarly to you. Only difference is Klingon's going to be a leverage play for me on this slate. So I have a 15% min on him or for both set of lineups. And then the rest of this team, it makes me scared and nervous, but I'm trying to not to think about it too much. I have 71% exposure to Caleb Love, just in the mix of value guards with guys like Tyson and some of the other ones we've touched on. I do like, Davion's a leverage play, so that helps a little bit, and I do like him, but Caleb Love, he has great upside when he's not sucking. So I'm with you. Hopefully he starts and this looks really good, but 71% is kind of probably where I would have capped him. So we'll see what happens there. And I think that's it. Denny is showing up for me in 18% of my lineups. As long as he's staying close to like 18 to 20%, that's ideal for me. And in my 20 max, he's showing up at 15% too. So once again, 15 to 20. Other side of this game, the Bucks are, not as interesting as you would think they would be outside of a few key pieces. Giannis is still out. He'll be out for a while. I think the only guy here is Rollins, or who are you looking at?
Yeah, it's pretty much Rollins and no one else for me. He's been the guy with Giannis out. He's getting to the point where his price is kind of getting a bit scary, but the form he's in, especially the matchup, just going to eat that chalk and move on.
Yeah, I did cap Rollins at 50%. I like him. I think he's in a good spot, but he's no longer a value play. And with that price tag, I just don't want that much of him. I just want to create some unique lines by capping him. If the value guys burn me, I expect it. But if Rollins burns me and he's in 95% of my lineups at 8K, it's just a very different story. And I'm trying to not crash out tonight. So we'll see what happens. All right. Next up, we have the Bulls. And it looks like we just got that news, which I am very, very thankful for. We found out that Vucevic is out. Isaac Okoro was already out. Kevin Huerter is out. So we should see guys like Jalen Smith start. And then the rest of the everyone else sees like a nice boost. With Kevin Huerter out, that makes guys like Kobe White, Trey Jones, and Ayo Dosunmu see a nice boost as well. I know we haven't probably seen things update yet, but how are you thinking about things right now?
Yeah, Jalen Smith will be a smash play, of course, at 4,300. He should start, so I would imagine he's going to be a core play when I rerun.
Yep.
Giddey, I'm glad we got this news, but I'm kind of sad too because I feel like Giddey was going under-owned in this matchup at 5%. He's definitely not going to be 5% anymore, so had a 10% man, but I'll just kind of wait and see when we get updated numbers on ownership and kind of determine how much of them I want. But do love him in this spot. He's averaging pretty close to a triple-double. He's slightly missing it, but he just has crazy upside and a super soft matchup. So definitely attacking that. And then I feel better about guys like Kobe White and Ayo. I will definitely have some exposure there, but again, I'll just wait to see what ownership does and probably just match the field there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe Jalen Smith will end up being a core play by the time everything updates at 4,300. And then I have a 10% min on both Giddey and White, just with some of that news we've recently gotten. Those are two guys I want to prioritize. And I'm doing that in both 150 and 20 max. I do think once things update, by the time we get to like 645, 650, I'll probably have more than that. Not with a min. I just think their projections will move enough where they'll probably show up a bit more than that. So yeah, these guys look a lot better and great matchup against the Pelicans. Also, this is the highest total game on the slate. So we're always forcing exposure to these guys one way or the other. I'm with you with Giddey. I might have to end up going over that 10%, and I'll force it if ownership is around that. I just want to be over the field on these guys. Next up, we have the Pelicans side of things, and the Pelicans are still without Herb Jones. Jordan Hawkins is still out. No new injury news outside of that. Looks like none of these guys are standing out for you so far, besides probably Derek Queen.
Yeah, I was about to say it's pretty much Derek Queen for me. All I'll say is I'm glad that this team is finally seeing what we saw in Queen, and they're unleashing him. Like, he just continues to smash. He should be more expensive than he is. So I'm just going to hammer him again tonight. Great matchup. Even better without Vooch. So love him. One of my favorite players tonight. Yeah. Zion, I don't think I'm ready to target him yet. He still hasn't been playing over 30 minutes. It is a great spot for him. And he is good enough to where he can potentially pay it off within that time frame, but just not going to risk it in my 20 max. I was getting a little bit of fears. I'm okay if he shows up. He's a little too inconsistent for me to feel too strong about him, but again, I do love this matchup, so I'll be okay with him. And then Trey Murphy, you can always throw him in the mix. If I was doing 150, I would force him in. But with Zion back, I'm not as big of a fan of him, especially for 20 max. So probably going to leave him out. And then everyone else is kind of hard to play with Zion back. So
yeah. Queen is more expensive on FanDuel, which makes it just more of a conversation. But on DK, with him being 5,800, like you said, he's still too cheap. We know he's great. I'm not going to go on a rant with that. I do have a 20% min on Zion in my 150 max. 20 max, I thought about it. I do really like this spot for him, but just with the lack of minutes, I'm a little bit too nervous to pull the trigger on that. And for my 150 max, I do have a 10% minimum fears, just adding him into the mix of guards there, but I'm not going to be over the field. So a spot where I want to like them more than I actually do. DJ said Buzelis. Did you think about Buzelis at all? He didn't pop for me.
Yeah, no, not tonight. Kind of waiting for him to play more consistent than what he is. His floor is horrible right now, so didn't get there.
It's like I tattooed myself. Oh, maybe. Who knows? Let's see. Tamales, we do a little bit of everything. Primarily DraftKings, though, if I'm being honest. And then, yeah, looks like that's all the questions for today. We're tight on time. If you have more questions, reach out in the Discord. Wish you all luck. Let's get it tonight, y'all. Peace out.